Howdy everyone and welcome back to the channel. Napoleon is the newest historic epic from Ridley Scott, one of the greatest directors of all time. This film obviously centers around Napoleon Bonaparte, who's arguably the greatest general to ever live, and was the Emperor of France in the early 1800s. Now, I came into this movie with sky-high expectations. I'm a big Ridley Scott fan. I think he's one of the best directors to ever do it. Academy Award winner Joaquin Phoenix in the starring role, and I'm actually a really big history guy as well. I am pretty familiar with Napoleon Bonaparte's story. I spent some time in Paris in the past and I got to read up on, just the French history, so I felt like I had decent background going into this film. I was really excited to see that period of history put onto screen. And Gladiator is one of my favorite movies of all time. You got Ridley Scott going back, doing another historic epic, and so what's the result? Really mixed. First things first, this thing is shot beautifully. I'm a big fan of the cinematography in this film. I think all of the landscapes look stunning. I think the interior shots whenever they're in these grand palaces look amazing. Even whenever there isn't something grand going on the screen, I just love the way this movie's shot. I don't know what it is exactly, but the cinematographer, I'm gonna butcher his name, Dariusz Wolski, really did outdo himself. I really did love how this movie looked. And I also love the costumes in this movie. I thought that the costume designer really did a fantastic job of replicating what people wore at that time. Whether you were a servant or a literal emperor, I thought all the costumes were perfect given the time period. The costume designer should receive an Academy Award nomination for this. Really, really excellent work. The movie also does a good job of thrusting you into what France was like at that time period. Very, very chaotic. It feels like there's a revolution going on every 2 seconds, like this person's in power, okay, this parliament's in power, oh, now we have an emperor. It was very chaotic. Despite the fact that no one in this movie speaks French, and a lot of them are just English or American, whatever, Hollywood's gonna Hollywood, I'm not gonna gripe on it too bad. But despite the fact that no one is really speaking French or even has a French dialect, I thought they did a great job of getting us thrusted into France. Vanessa Kirby was a true scene stealer in this movie. Anytime that she was on screen, the world revolved around her, which is really hard considering who she was spending most of her scenes with, Joaquin Phoenix. And Vanessa Kirby's really making a habit of being excellent in every movie that she's in. Even whenever she's not in a great movie, she is excellent in it, and I thought that she delivered probably the best performance of the movie, which is extremely important for this movie because we get a lot of Empress Josephine here, where this movie, it is Napoleon's story, but Empress Josephine is on screen for over half of the film, so they really needed an actress to step in and embody that role. Vanessa Kirby wasn't even originally supposed to be in the movie. I believe it was supposed to be Jodie Comer, who I'm sure would have done a great job, but hey, if you're gonna get a backup, Vanessa Kirby is who you want to call. She was great. The battle sequences are excellent whenever they're on screen here. I thought they did a good job of showing how smart Napoleon can be in a war setting in that first opening fight as well as the second one. We only get 3 of them in this movie, all of which are shot excellently. I actually would really love to see how they did it visual effects wise, because there are so many shots where you see a whole row of horses coming in, and I just didn't think that that's how they shot movies nowadays. It's kind of ingrained in me now that there's gonna be CGI in a battle sequence, but I was watching a lot of these scenes and I couldn't really see where the CGI was, so I'm wondering if they actually shot a lot of these practically. The battle scene on the ice is, in my opinion, the best scene in the entire movie. Absolutely stunning. So this movie had a lot of things going for it, but at the end of the day, I wasn't really positive on this movie, and the biggest gripe that I have with it is its tone. This is the exact same issue I had with House of Gucci a couple years ago, where Ridley Scott knows how to deliver a really dramatic scene that lands, but then the very next one, it's like he's gonna do a sex joke now. And this movie does that back and forth throughout basically the entire movie, and for me, it was just jerking me around constantly to where I was like, okay, I don't know what kind of tone he's going for in this movie. There are some really dramatic scenes. There are scenes where a lot of people in my auditorium were laughing a lot, and for me personally, that's not really what I was looking for in this movie, but I'm willing to buy into that if there's a consistent tone in here. But I don't know what's going on with Ridley Scott lately. It's like he wants to do a comedy, but he also wants to do a wartime epic about one of the most historic figures in history. And it's like, dude, you gotta pick a lane at some point. And the editing is really, really weird, y'all, because you'll have one scene that's really dramatic or it's like a battle, then the next one there's just a joke in there and it's played for laughs. Like, it's like tonally, it doesn't link up quite right. I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud and say you can't have any jokes, but like, it was so consistently out of whack editing wise, where it's like, who was on the cutting room floor and decided that this scene needed to go here? By the way, there's a lot of scenes that could have been cut out of this movie, mind you, so the editing was a major negative for me. And unfortunately, I think it impacted Joaquin Phoenix's performance for me, because it's, again, sort of the same issue that I had with House of Gucci, where some actors felt like they were acting in different movies. Sometimes it felt like Vanessa Kirby and Joaquin Phoenix were going for two totally different things. And I don't blame Joaquin for this. I feel like he was doing the best with what he had, and he did commit to what kind of performance he was doing. It was just unfortunate because I felt like they were portraying Napoleon to be this bumbling idiot, and we didn't get enough of him being a big-time war strategist. I mean, he is arguably the most dominant general ever. And for most of this movie, he's kind of played like an idiot. Like, don't get me wrong, they do show his smarts and how he can think strategically in that opening battle, the battle there against the Russians or the Prussians on the ice. But there just wasn't that right balance struck, because yes, he was kind of a funny figure in history because he was so controversial in many ways, but also you got to give credit where credit is due and just show that he's not an idiot. Like, he is a war expert. Also, there's definitely scenes missing in this movie. For a movie that's 2.5 hours long and has scenes that you can cut out, I don't know why we don't have a scene with Napoleon's mother showing the relationship there between her and her son before it's alluded to that Napoleon is a mama's boy by Empress Josephine. Like, we get mentions how Napoleon brought himself out of the mud and into a palace, but we didn't really ever see that. We saw him as like a lower ranking officer before the Battle of Toulon, but we didn't really see that upbringing. And I feel like there has to be scenes in here with his mother that just didn't make the final cut, and I'm confused because there's plenty of things that you could have cut in here. But I just want to reiterate, this is gonna be good for some people. I believe it has a positive on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not the end-all be-all. It just wasn't what I was looking for. It really is strange that a movie like this can feel so rushed with a 2.5 hour runtime. I feel like we're running into this with a lot of movies lately. I feel like movies are just getting longer and longer, which is fine as long as you can warrant the runtime. Like, a good example, I think, is Oppenheimer. That's 3 hours long, but it did not drag for a moment for me. Or even Killers of the Flower Moon, which, honestly, all the scenes in there are integral. I don't see anything that you can cut. That movie's just long because it's 3.5 hours, and that's a lot to ask out of an audience. But I almost feel like for how much happened in Napoleon's life, you can't really do one movie about it. I feel like it's more due for a mini-series, or maybe if you're gonna make a movie, focus on one aspect of his life. Steven Spielberg is developing a mini-series based off of Stanley Kubrick's old, I guess, script that he had written long ago. Spielberg is developing it with HBO, and they've collaborated extremely well in the past with Band of Brothers, so I'm heavily looking forward to that mini-series whenever it comes out. But yeah, this one is really sad for me because I was really looking forward to this movie. I didn't really like it all that much. It's not terrible by any means, but at the end of the day, its tone and editing just made for not a great movie for me. But yeah, that's just what I thought about Napoleon. What do you guys think about it? Leave me a comment down below with your thoughts, and make sure to like this video. It really helps me out with the algorithm in YouTube, and subscribe for more. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.